Coming to DARPA is like grabbing the nose cone of a rocket and holding on for dear life.
DARPA is a place where if you don't invent the internet, you only get a B.
A DARPA program manager quite literally invents tomorrow.
Coming to work every day and being humbled by that.
DARPA is not one person or one place. It's a collection of people that are excited about moving technology forward.
Hi, my name is Stacy Worsba, and I'll be your Voices from DARPA host. I'd like to start off by introducing Dr. Jean-Paul Chrétien, a recently retired Navy physician who joined DARPA as a program manager in 2020. JP's interests include disease and injury prevention, operational medicine, and biothreat countermeasures. JP serves as the program manager for the DARPA Triage Challenge, which is using a series of challenge events to spur development of novel physiological features for medical triage. The DARPA Triage Challenge, or DTC as we call it, aims to drive breakthrough innovations in identification of signatures of injury that will help medical responders perform scalable, timely, and accurate triage. Of particular interest are mass casualty events, both in the civilian and military settings, when medical resources are limited relative to the need. Here's JP.
I'm a career military medical officer, and one of the situations we need to be prepared for on the battlefield is dealing with large numbers of casualties. And we see the same challenge in non-military situations as well. You think about a natural disaster like an earthquake, thousands of victims, even tens of thousands in a few minutes, and not many responders on the scene. And we could imagine something analogous in a military situation if we have many casualties and not many people there to respond to those needs yet. So what we want to do in the DARPA Triage Challenge is augment the capability of those few responders who are on the scene and help them get to the people who need help most urgently before it's too late. Triage is a critical part of mass casualty response. Those initial decisions of how urgent a patient is for medical care and what sort of medical care they need are life and death. Because if we get those wrong, then people won't get the care they need when they need it. And the way we do triage hasn't changed very much in the past couple of centuries.
Here, medical officers, expert in judging the condition of casualties, sort the patients and determine their disposition.
That's from a newsreel from World War II.
We use technology in about the same way in triage, which is to say we hardly use it at all. And we see an opportunity to build on advances in several technical disciplines, including robotics and sensors and artificial intelligence, and revolutionize the way this is done and deliver better tools to medics and first responders so they can do triage better and faster and ultimately save more lives.
This is a wide open space. There are no existing systems, no existing technologies that do what we want to do. And so we don't know what the best approach is going to be. We don't know what the best sensors and algorithms and platforms are going to be able to autonomously find victims in a mass casualty situation, even in challenging settings, even if it's dark, even if people are buried under a collapsed wall. Systems that will find them and be able to evaluate their medical status and determine who needs help most urgently. So we don't know what's going to work. And a challenge is a great format for bringing in a lot of ideas and a lot of different ways of solving the problem. And then we can compare them head to head with objective scoring criteria, and we can learn what approaches work better.
Kicked off in the fall of 2023, the DARPA Triage Challenge is taking place over 3 years, until the fall of 2026. Participating teams include data scientists, ML and AI experts, roboticists, and STEM experts who are competing for prizes.
The DARPA Triage Challenge has 3 competitions that are running in parallel and developing different types of technologies for triage in mass casualty situations. We have the systems competition, the virtual competition, and the data competition. The systems and the virtual competition are getting at the need to develop more scalable capabilities for triage.
And so in the systems competition, teams will need to develop robotic systems, either drones or ground robots or robotic teams with combinations of both of those. And those are equipped with various types of standoff sensors. They can be whatever the team wants, audio or camera or thermal or radar, whatever they want, as long as it can operate from a distance and doesn't require contact with a casualty. And they need to develop the algorithms. And this is really the heart of the DARPA Triage Challenge, the algorithms that will take the data from those sensors and identify injury features. And so in the systems competition, we're going to mock up physical simulations of mass casualty scenes with actors and mannequins and environmental effects. And competitors will bring their systems, their drones or robots on the ground with sensors and algorithms to process sensor data. And these systems will need to autonomously deploy and find casualties and assess their injuries and relay that information to the DARPA command post, where we'll score it for accuracy in real time. The virtual competition is a virtual version of the systems competition. So this is based in the DARPA Triage Challenge virtual testbed, where we will have simulations of casualties and simulated environmental effects and sensors and platforms. And as in the systems competition, the teams who are competing in the virtual competition will have to develop algorithms that will take the data from these virtual sensors that are evaluating the virtual casualties and identify injury features. Again, that all has to happen autonomously. And there's a couple of reasons for having the virtual competition. One is that we can simulate situations that we can't simulate in the systems competition. So in the systems competition, we don't have anyone who's actually injured. We have mannequins and actors and can approximate that. But in a virtual setting, we can in some ways simulate those injuries in a more realistic way. We can simulate very large numbers of casualties. We can simulate situations that we can't do in a physical setting, like chemical exposures. So in a way, it gives us a wider scope of technology and challenges to explore. And it's also might be easier for some groups to get involved in this. So what we don't want is a team that has great ideas for how to solve this problem, but just don't have the ability to bring all that hardware together and join us out here. But they can do that in a virtual environment. So we can get ideas for what works in a virtual setting, and then hopefully bring those over to the system setting, and we get lessons from the system setting and go back and forth like that. So those two work hand in hand.
While the DTC systems and virtual competitions focus on sensing and algorithms in the field, the data competition looks further along in the process once casualties are being tended to.
The data competition is working on the capability to predict medical needs. When you have someone who's been injured, it can be difficult to determine how seriously injured they are on the initial assessment using the types of measurements that we typically make. And I might take someone's pulse and look at their breathing and interact with them, get a sense of their medical status. What we know is some people can have very serious injuries that we may not be able to pick it up with those quick initial assessments because their bodies are able to compensate for that injury for a period of time. So an example of that is losing blood internally. So you've got some internal wound. You're actually bleeding a lot, but it's not visible. The body can compensate for a while. And then by the time it becomes evident that that is what happened, it may be too late to help them. So we want to pick up on early indications of those types of injuries. And so to do that, we're working with a couple of world-class clinical trauma centers, University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center and University of Pittsburgh. And they are providing large volumes of data from actual trauma patients. This is de-identified data from real trauma patients in the early post-injury period. Patients come in on a helicopter, they go to the trauma bay, they're admitted to the hospital, they may go to the intensive care unit. And along the way, just as a part of routine care that these trauma centers provide, extensive data is collected on these patients. It starts in the helicopter and follows them all the way through the hospitalization. And the data includes continuous waveform data from clinical sensors, monitoring cardiac activity and heart rate and blood pressure. If the patient is on a ventilator, then all of those data from the ventilator are included as well. And then there are clinical observations about the patients, and there's documentation of interventions that were provided. So when the patient, for example, received blood products and how much they received, whether the patient went to surgery, whether the patient needed some sort of intervention to restore their airway. So all of these data are recorded, and this is the basis for the data competition in the Triage Challenge. We are bringing all of these data together and providing access to them for the competitors. And the competitors will have an opportunity to develop algorithms that use these data to predict the life-saving interventions that these patients actually needed. That's what they're going to train their algorithms to, and that's what we're going to test them on in patient data that they haven't seen yet. So can they take observations from, say, the first few minutes of care? Can they take those data and predict what interventions the patient needed? And then if they can do that, then we have a basis for developing sensors and algorithms to detect those signatures. And so imagine a medic in a field setting dealing with many casualties and has to decide who to prioritize for getting to a hospital. And they can say, well, this person, maybe they don't look so bad, but I know this person's going to need surgery within the hour. That's something we don't have the ability to do now. And so that's what we're getting at in the data challenge.
Challenge teams and the Voices from DARPA crew recently attended the first DTC workshop event. Let's hear from Alyssa Rupley, who serves as a scientific and engineering technical advisor on the program.
So we're here at Workshop 1 for the DARPA Triage Challenge. We're down here at the Guardian Center in Georgia. This opportunity is the first of 6 events for our systems competition teams. We have 9 teams out here, and so this is the first time they're getting to see kind of what we've been setting up for the last few months, what we've been planning. It is time for us to be able to test out our infrastructure. We have our first of the prize event challenges happening this fall, so this gets us a time to do some shakeouts, some testing, our scoring server infrastructure, as well as giving the teams an opportunity to see what they can maybe expect. We know we've already seen some teams kind of surprised and excited to see kind of what we've got ready for them on the course in our practice field. So it's kind of a great opportunity for them to get a sense of what to come for the up-and-coming Challenge Event 1.
This is very much a team effort. To actually put on any DARPA program, but in particular a challenge event, requires a team. So we have a logistics team that is looking after all of the logistical arrangements here at the Guardian Center. Where do we set up tents for the team? Where can we park the vehicles? How is the traffic flow going to move through the area? Where are people going to stay? What are people going to eat? Safety considerations, a host of logistical considerations. We have partners that are working on the networking aspect of this. So this is actually a very important part of the competition. So the systems teams have to deploy their UAVs or UGVs, and they need to sense casualty features in a non-contact way, so from a few meters away, and then transmit that data back to their base station. We need networking to record the ground truth. So we have ground truth from casualties. Our simulated casualties are all wearing sensors, so we can see their physiological features at the time they're being sensed by the systems. And so we need to figure out how to match the instantaneous report from the system with the ground truth at that time. And then we have a command post where we have a view of how the competitors are doing, camera views of the area, looking at the ground truth readings, looking at what the systems teams are reporting, and scoring everything in real time. That's part of the competition aspect of this, that we have a leaderboard and we have a real-time scoring report. So there's a whole lot of networking and IT issues that go along with that. We have partners that are figuring out what kind of casualties would be useful for these scenarios and planning for each casualty. Every casualty has a story and they have a certain injury pattern, and that could be a mannequin or could be an actor, and they both need to be moulaged.
Let me jump in here. Moulage is defined as the art of applying mock injuries for the purpose of training emergency response teams and other military and medical personnel. In the case of the DARPA Triage Challenge, we're using moulage to visually mimic wounds that can then be recorded and interpreted by sensors on the team's drones and or robots.
Actors need a particular script. They need to understand what kind of role they're playing and be consistent in playing that role throughout the competition. The systems that the competitors are using, they may interact with the casualty, give the casualty prompts and evaluate their response. That all has to be autonomous, but the actor has to know what kind of role they're playing to determine how they're going to respond to that. And we have partners that are thinking about the metrics and the scoring and how do you evaluate performance in this competition, and looking at the data in the virtual competition as well. It is a team, and that includes the Army Telemedicine and Advanced Technology Research Center, the Naval Information Warfare Center, or NIWC, Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, SA, Big Picture Production. So it is very much a team effort.
One of the most striking elements of the challenge event is the competition field, where you'll see simulated crashed vehicles, large holes in the ground, and simulated casualties. Now, we certainly can't have actually injured people, so there are both live actors and medical mannequins on site. Alex Donnelly from Tetrick explains.
Challenges for actors is you can't simulate very distressing simulations. Their vitals are going to be pretty stable throughout. We can ask them to hold breath or have rapid breath throughout, but they can't sustain that for 30 minutes at a time. Mannequins specifically are important because they can simulate more expectant casualties, so the casualties that are doing less than well. They are able to give different vitals that we can't get with live actors. So different respirations that might be labored or high respirations. More severe injury patterns can be simulated in mannequins versus live actors. Trying to balance what is real versus what can be simulated with specific mannequins. Ground truth is everything on the simulation field itself in real time. We are collecting to make sure that the teams are providing correct answers. So as they're scoring, we will have our ground truth for not only humans, so that ground truth sensor suite, collecting heart rate, respiration rate, also for mannequins, but also for placement of where everyone is in the field, the different moulage makeup applications that are on all of the casualties, making sure that there's no disputes in what is actually there, what's happening, so it can be a validated experience and there is no question for what's happening. We have a couple of our team members out that are on field during simulation and test runs. So we are spotting all live actors to make sure that there is no real world emergencies that are actually coming in, but also spotting the systems. So the UGVs and UASs that are flying around, they have certain rules that they have to adhere to. They can't get within a certain amount of distance between live actors or any casualties, so also mannequins. So we are just watching to make sure that no one's unsafe. Safety is paramount here. It's been a huge conversation. We've learned a lot from this already, that maybe certain protective shelters are more important than others or better for team data that they're collecting. So taking that into our data set, making sure that we're still having safety as the first priority for our live actors and staff around, but also making sure that the data is valuable and useful for the teams.
How do you simulate casualties in the virtual platform?
In the virtual competition, the foundation of this is simulated casualties. So these are metahumans with realistic models for physiology and for physiological features that could be picked up by sensors. So if you were to just look at the virtual platform and look at these simulated humans, they might look like any humans that you would see in a video game. But underneath, there's actual physiology that's based on a validated physiological simulator. And so those casualties are exhibiting features, even things that we can't see with the naked eye, that sensors can pick up. And so our systems teams in the workshop, they're actually doing that now with real people. And so we have the ability to do that in the virtual platform as well.
What have you learned from the teams on site? What has their experience been like?
The teams are really excited. And so they're using this workshop as a chance to collect data on a course that's similar to what they're going to face in the competition. Some of them haven't had a chance to collect any training data on their own. So they're going to get to run a course that's similar to what they're going to have to deal with. So it's a great opportunity for them to practice. It's a chance to meet other teams. So we've got probably the concentration in the world of people who are working on this problem in this way right now. And so it's a great opportunity to make connections and talk about strategies that people are employing. One thing that's really stood out is the variety of approaches. And so we know on paper the different systems and strategies the teams have, but then actually seeing them in action. It is a competition, but it's a friendly competition. it's to the benefit of all of us and the people who these technologies are going to save someday if people collaborate and share.
We were able to record some of the team's initial thoughts during the workshop.
I've always wanted to do one of these challenges, and so when this one came up, we felt like we had the right set of people and technology that we really felt like we could make a difference, and really excited to be here and participate in this one. We think it can make a big difference in helping to save lives in these mass casualty incident kinds of situations. We're really excited about getting the first set of data and sort of seeing what things are like. It's one thing to read about them, and it's another thing to actually try to put all the pieces together.
These are much more realistic simulated casualties than we'd ever be able to do on our own. For example, in the field behind me, there's a giant dug-out area that represents a bomb crater. That's not something they're going to let us do on a university campus. So it's a fantastic opportunity to interact with other teams, to have our robots out in the field in casualty scenarios that have been vetted by DARPA.
We're just excited that our team, being a university team, has a mix of students and staff. This is a great opportunity for students to get involved in impactful research, applied research. Field robotics is a difficult research domain. It is significantly more difficult to get results than laboratory experiments. We're coming at it with strong expertise in autonomy and robotics, and we're coming up to speed on the medical aspect of it.
Our team's the core to it is the biomedical engineering and the medical staff. And we actually have folks on our team that are former combat medics, former firefighters, and individuals who have been in the military before that have that first world experience.
I personally come from a long line of first responders. I'm a veteran, combat veteran myself, so these things really matter. I mean, this is DARPA, right? So we're playing with the big dogs now.
Lots of different ideas and methodologies from teams, but all ultimately serving one holistic idea of advancing state-of-the-art in medical triage.
We have these 3 separate competition tracks, but fundamentally, the DARPA Triage Challenge is about detecting and understanding physiological signatures of injury. How can we detect them better? How can we use them better to predict what a patient's medical needs are going to be? So we're going about it in different ways. In the systems challenge and the virtual challenge, we're using standoff sensors on platforms. In the data challenge, these are mostly contact-based sensors that people get in medevac and trauma bay. But it's about understanding the physiological response to injury and detecting signals in there that will tell us what kind of medical needs a patient's going to have. And that'll help us give a jump on the care they're going to need and save lives.
This is very important work. I think when we first started on this, it was kind of like a dream, like, oh yeah, that would be wonderful to have standoff triage capabilities. But as we are now seeing this in real time as it's being developed, we can see that down the road, this is going to be changing to the world of triage and able to scale, hopefully, to real-world mass casualty situations. And so it is a huge deal and a huge step of what we're taking with DTC.
We are all so excited to see this actually taking shape. The DARPA team and now our extended team of partners has been hard at work for a couple of years now getting set up for this. There's a lot that needed to be done to put all this in place. And so this workshop is the first opportunity we have to see the teams in the systems competition actually operating their systems. So this makes it real, and everyone here is super energized.
I'm excited. I love these kind of things. Being out here and at the workshops and at the events is really kind of what the hard work is going into. Like, we've been working on this for a year or two. And so, all the behind the scenes stuff, there's a lot of things that happen on the back end. But this is kind of the reason why we do it, is for the teams, for us, for the technology to kind of see it all put into play. All those emails and PowerPoint slides and everything else. This is kind of what it all comes down to and why I keep getting energized by continuing to work on these kinds of events.
This year's challenge competition field is already set, but there are still opportunities to get involved.
We welcome engagement with the DARPA team by anyone who's interested in the DARPA Triage Challenge. So I'd recommend checking out the website, triagechallenge.darpa.mil, and you can find information on where we are in the challenge and the structure and the plan for the challenge there. You can also sign up for a newsletter there. And in the future, our challenge events will be open to the public later in the program. That is the plan. In the meantime, If you are in the emergency response community or medical community, robotics community, sensors, AI, and you have some particular interest in this, we'd encourage you to get in touch with us. The DARPA Triage Challenge is going to run for a few years, but then it's over. And then these technologies, we want to see them actually continue to develop and be used in the world. And so we're going to have to get to know and understand the community that might be using them and would have feedback for us now that would be helpful in shaping the program so we can deliver systems that will actually be useful. So please do get in touch.
Detailed information on the DARPA Triage Challenge can be found at triagechallenge.darpa.mil, and additional resources are linked in the show notes. Thanks to Tom Shortridge for producing this episode, and from all of us at Voices from DARPA, thanks for listening.